Welcome everyone to our webinar, and we are going to be tackling how to avoid burnout. My name is Gloria Ko, and I serve as Senior Director for our Alumni Career Engagement team here at UCLA Alumni Affairs. We're so excited to have you here with us today to learn from our wonderful career coach and alumna, Lucy Tseng. She's part of our Career Coaches Network, and throughout the year, we have career coaches who share amazing content and amazing tips and tricks and strategies. And today we're really excited to discuss burnout. So today we'll discuss how to recognize when your life light has turned on and learn tips on how to avoid burnout. I wanted to take this opportunity to thank our Alumni Association sustaining donors. It is with your help that we're able to strengthen the Bruin community with career programs like this. And so for some general webinar housekeeping, we will have time at the end of our program for Q&A with our speaker. So please use the Q&A function below to submit your questions rather than using the chat. We will be recording the event and we'll send out the recording when it is available. And so now to start our program, I'm excited to introduce Lucy Tseng. Lucy's purpose in life is to inspire and support others in finding, pursuing, and living their own passions and purpose. As a life and resilience coach, working with folks who are experiencing major changes, particularly athletes of all levels who are transitioning to life after sports. Additionally, she is part of the development team that raised $5.49 billion during the UCLA Centennial campaign and focuses on raising funds for scholarships and student support. In 2014, Lucy graduated from the University of San Francisco, the SoCal campus there, with a master's degree in sports management. Her master's thesis focused on building a program to include life skills and development training for student athletes. In July 2020, she was appointed as a staff advisor to the UC Board of Regents by President Janet Napolitano. Her breadth of experiences has helped her discover her passion, being a resource to all people. So excited to have her here today. I'll turn it over to Lucy to start our program. Welcome, Lucy.
Thank you, Gloria. Appreciate you. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm super excited to have this opportunity to share with you a topic that I'm personally very passionate about, but also, have a challenge with here and there. I'm just a regular person, as you all are too, and this is something that we can all learn and support each other on. So let's get started. Right. There we go. All right, so we're here today to talk about avoiding burnout. I am super thrilled to be a part of this Alumni Association, and go Bruins. Today's agenda will be pretty straightforward. I'll tell you all a little more about me. We'll go straight into what burnout is, how to avoid it. We'll do a little bit of reflection and then go right into Q&A. In this session, you'll learn about what burnout is and how it can affect you in many ways. You can also learn how to take steps when you approach and want to avoid burnout. And there are also techniques to help you maintain productivity and effectiveness, even when you feel like you are really low energy. And most importantly, in my opinion, how you can bounce back after experiencing burnout. So a little bit about me. I was born and raised in Southern California in the San Gabriel Valley. I am a lover of fitness, sports, music, arts and crafts, food, travel, amongst other things. I'm a proud Bruin, class of 2012, also have a master's degree in sport management. I'm also a certified mental performance coach and have the pleasure of working with UCLA Development. I am also a proud Rotarian, specifically leading a club that's fighting human trafficking, a global issue. Happy to tell you all more about that as well. And I think, again, at the very end, but most important, I am a new mommy to baby Lauren, you can see on the right, and my first child, Tunchi the Husky. And on the top right corner, this is one of my favorite quotes I'd love to share with people. Never let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do, from the great coach John Wooden. So now that you know a little more about me, let's talk about what is burnout. Well, there's lots of different ways to describe what burnout could be. Here are a few ways, which I'll share with you, but feel free to use the chat to share what burnout looks like for you. If we're talking about an image, a Bitmoji, The image on the left immediately reminds me of what burnout looks like, running on empty when I'm driving a car. There's other ways to think about what burnout could be. And again, feel free to share what burnout looks like for you in the chat. Chronic stress that has not been managed, and that can characterize itself through energy depletion, mental distancing, when you feel like someone who is generally pretty sociable and wanting to connect with people start to become more reserved and more like a recluse. They're probably experiencing something along the lines of burnout. And then an overall feeling of negativity, especially when you have a friend who is generally positive, sees the glass half full, start to be very cynical and start to have really negative opinions about things that they normally wouldn't experience or share. They might be experiencing some burnout. Another way to describe it is a form of exhaustion or constant feeling of being swamped or overwhelmed. And lastly, when you have no motivation or interest in things you typically would, you probably are experiencing or getting really close to what burnout could be. All right. So how to avoid it? We're just going to jump right in. I have a couple of steps here. They hopefully are quite tangible. And later on in our presentation, you'll be receiving a link that has a bunch of tools that you can use. I wouldn't say to use all of them because that could be a lot to do. But at the same time, I've gathered a bunch of tools so that people can find which ones work well for you. With that, the first thing to do when you want to try to avoid burnout is knowing your tools. For myself, I am an avid user of a planner, a paper planner, specifically the Passion Planner, founded by a fellow Bruin. And there's also, similar companies that provide tools that are very supportive of people wanting to get things done, staying organized, being productive, and also just not forgetting about things. Because I am a new mom, I have a, mommy brain is what people call it, constantly forgetting about things that, may not be super important, but should get done at some point. So I've learned that using my tools, writing things down, holding myself accountable has been really helpful without bringing that stress of, oh my goodness, how can I forget about doing this for the 15th time, right? So knowing your tools is extremely important. The one on the left is a Passion Planner roadmap, which helps kind of think about what you want to do longer term. The one on the right is a Best Self Company weekly action plan in which you can write down a couple of tasks that you want to get done that may not be needing to be, tackled immediately, but you don't want to forget about it. Next, you want to identify your triggers. When you want to avoid burnout, again, like I mentioned earlier, burnout looks differently for everybody. So learn more about yourself. What are some things that could be happening in your life that could tell you that you're getting too overwhelmed, that you are too stressed out, that you're getting too close to burnout? These are some examples from me. As I mentioned, I have a dog, and sometimes I find myself yelling at my dog for barking or doing things that dogs do. And then I have to catch myself and say, wait, he's a dog. He's doing what he's supposed to be doing. Why am I yelling at him? Why am I deflecting what I am experiencing to my helpless, cute dog? Another way I figure out that I'm getting really close to burnout is when I'm always rushing or potentially late to things. I'm one of those people that believes in being early. So I try my very best. If the meeting's at 12, I try to be there at least 5 to 10 minutes ahead, just because that's how I hope other people will respect my time too. I'm not perfect at it, but when I see a consistency of me being late or constantly rushing, that's when I know I have too much on my plate. I might be getting close to burnout. So identifying what the triggers in your life might be could really help you realize that it's time to slow down. Next, once you realize that you're getting close to burnout, draw your line, learn how to say no, figure out what you can do to take some things off your plate and really give yourself a chance to recuperate. It's important, most of us who are likely on a self-help webinar like this is wanting to be a high achiever, really high in productivity, wanting to help people, wanting to do as much as we can to be supportive and a good teammate. Well, sometimes that takes a lot of toll on us. And we have to learn to draw our line so that we don't burn out, and then it won't impact other people as well. But guess what? Sometimes we do burn out, and it's totally normal and okay. So when that happens, let's master our comeback. Each of us has the ability to be quite resilient. Resilience is something that we can learn. And like this rose in the concrete, sometimes it can feel like we just want to give up and we don't want to do anything anymore. Well, guess what? You have the opportunity to grow and bloom anyway, as long as you learn how to master your comeback and learn how to identify your triggers, how to draw your line, and realize that you have the opportunity to bounce back. With that, taking a break is important when you have so much going on. Here are some examples of how you can take breaks. These are actually researched and proven to be actually successful to help people rewind and really recuperate and find equilibrium. So there's one idea that's called the Pomodoro technique, where you work straight for 25 minutes and you take a short break for 5 minutes. You do this for a few sessions. They say 4, and then you take a longer break. There's also the 90-minute work blocks, where you can work straight for 90 minutes before taking a break. There's the other option of 2 15-minute breaks per day. And I want to be clear, when I say taking a break, I'm not just saying sit there and do nothing. That can be really hard for some of us, to just sit there and do nothing, because we feel like we're wasting time, or I'd rather be working, or I'd rather, be doing something productive. Well, productivity could look different too. So during your break, you can do various restful things, including taking a walk or eating a snack, maybe chatting with some coworkers on Slack, or even taking a quick power nap. Those are all productive breaks that will help you be productive, be able to avoid burnout, and potentially, when you experience burnout, hopefully helping you master your comeback. With that, let's walk the walk. If you happen to be sitting or driving or walking your dog or something, take a minute to stretch, roll your neck around. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I think you all have an idea of how stretching could look like for you in whatever case you are at today. Do a light stretch. We're going to put in the chat a link to the toolbox that I was sharing about how to avoid burnout. Open that toolbox. We'll spend a few minutes to gather what the tools are in there, and then we will do some reflections. So you're welcome to use the chat to share any reflections that you have. I highly recommend doing either the Passion Planner daily to plan out the rest of your day, or maybe even looking into the roadmap to give yourself a few minutes to think about some bigger projects in life that you would like to achieve at some point, but you have to hold yourself accountable to them. And in a few minutes, we'll do some reflection. You can do your reflection in the chat by sharing with fellow Bruins, and I will let you all know kind of what I'm working on. All righty. While you all are wrapping up your quick activity, I would love to share some of the things that I do to reflect. One of the habits that I have, to be productive, I do need an electronic calendar, which is really helpful for me to be convenient when I'm making appointments. But every weekend, usually on Sunday afternoon, I try my best to pull out my Passion Planner so that I can plan out the rest of my week. It's not just about planning, but it's also about understanding what is coming up so that I can prepare myself, not just in materials or resources, but also mentally understanding what my coming week will look like. It's also a time for me to reflect and say, oh my goodness, this is a really jam-packed week. I need to make sure the following week is much less impactful, right? Or maybe, there's not much going on this week. Maybe I can look at my roadmap and see some of the things, the long-term projects that I would really like to do that I could possibly squeeze in on this light week. All of these things that I put into place for myself is my way of avoiding burnout. I am someone who loves to be involved. I am someone who has a lot of different passions. And again, I am a new mom, so I've got a whole human being to try to keep alive. And there's a lot of responsibility on my plate, just like many of you have. And so, what tools can you put into place for yourself? Because ultimately, when we burn out, we affect the people we love and care about or immediately in our lives. And it's hard for them to see us exhausted, disconnected, disappointed, or maybe even depressed. So we can do our best to put in the tools, walk the walk, do some reflections, and be able to really avoid burnout as much as possible. Now, as I mentioned again, I am not immune to burnout, and you won't be either. And there are definitely ways that you can come back from being too exhausted. It's okay to admit that you are experiencing burnout. I think that's one of the biggest challenges for people, is to just be honest and transparent and say that, you really need a break. And again, when you learn how to draw your line, then you'll be able to master your comeback. Feel free to share your reflection in the chat. Let us know kind of what are some of the tools that you do or you have in place in your life to make sure you don't burn out. With that, I invite Gloria to come back online to help us manage questions or comments.
Thanks, Lucy.
Sure.
Thank you for the tools. And as I know, some people may be looking around in the toolkit and looking at different, all the different PDFs. I know you mentioned the roadmap here, right? And you also had the other one that you liked. Can you share a little bit more about some of the tools that are in the toolkit that you enjoy and why you put them there?
Yeah, so I think, as I mentioned earlier, everyone has different styles. So, can you all see the toolkit now? You can, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I wanted to open it so you can see. So there's a bunch of toolkits from the Passion Planner. Passion Planner is one of my favorite companies that I work with. I'm actually an ambassador for them, which you'll hear about in a second. They have a super awesome launch today, which you'll hear about too. Passion Planner, they like to coin themselves as the paper life coach, which I believe, it's not just a planner. There's a couple of hints here and there throughout the planner that help you really think about kind of why you're scheduling things in your life. Oh, I see in the chat others are Passion Planner fans too. That's great. So this is an example of the Passion Planner. There's the monthly reflection. So again, questions to help you reflect on how you've spent your time, how you would like to spend your time, and overall, just, who are some people that you are grateful for, and, the services or the resources in your life, because it's important for you to not just look at the things that are making you stressed out, but also to think about things that make you happy. And then I also mentioned Best Self Co. Company is another group that I follow and work with pretty closely. There's the project action plan here that I have the cursor on, and the weekly action plan. So the project action plan I use, like when I do my roadmap, which is right here. One of my passions, I want to write a book. I don't know when, but at some point I would like to write a book. And this project action plan has, I have one that's basically Lucy wants to write a book. I have no idea what that looks like, but it probably entails, putting a manuscript together, getting an editor, thinking about self-publishing or bringing it to publishers, things like that. But I can't remember all of that with this mommy brain right now. So I'm going to write them down. And there's actually science that shows that writing things down helps with your memory, not just like because it's written, but actually literally you can remember things better after you have physically put pen or pencil and paper together. So try it, see if writing things down works for you. I'm totally for electronic stuff and making things convenient, but there is something special about putting pen to paper. There's also this habit tracker, Blogilates, as I mentioned earlier. I really enjoy fitness and exercising, and and I'm not like a crazy workout person, but I like staying healthy, and exercising does help me avoid burnout because it makes my body feel good. And so I follow Blogilates as well. And this is a habit tracker, either it's drinking water or eating veggies or making sure I took my prenatals for the day, things like that. And this is another tool, another company that I wanted to expose you to when it comes to finding tools that work for you. So yeah, these are just some examples. Later on, I'll share with you how to subscribe to my network, and happy to share many more tools.
Thank you, Lucy. We have a couple questions in the Q&A, but I want to encourage anyone who is watching, if you have a question, please add it into the Q&A so that we can answer them. I have a question here. Is any suggestions on how to recover from burnout once you hit it?
Sure. As I mentioned earlier, one of the biggest barriers when people experience burnout is just admitting that you're experiencing it. Once you start letting people know and sharing with your trustworthy support system, you will find that you are in this not alone, but you have the strength of a mighty village to help you come back. And that strength is not anything you can buy. That is not anything that you can predict, but it's the first part about coming back from burnout is just recognizing it, acknowledging it, and letting people know that you're experiencing it so that you can allow people around you to pull some of the weight off of you so that you can come back slowly but surely. Some other tangible things I would say is make sure you're drinking enough water. I mean, that's a literal thing that you can do, because when your body is tired, there's no way your brain is going to want to come back. There's no way your brain wants to climb out of the never-ending well, right? So I would, those are some tangible things. If you can get a walk in, get your physical body in shape, do a little light stretch like I asked you to do a little earlier. Those types of things bring your neurotransmitters to a place in which you recognize, oh, I am still able-bodied. I am still capable of growing, even though I feel like the concrete is piling onto me. If you get to a point where you feel like you really need some literal help, I would consider working with a coach or a therapist, or you can look into someone who has professional skills to help you with whatever you are actually experiencing. To share a little personal about me, I'm experiencing grief right now. I've had a pretty tough summer, and I, as a certified coach myself, have coaches whom I work with because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a human being, and I recognize that at some point, experiencing all the grief that I had this summer and coming back to work and trying to raise my child and running a business and making sure that I have career advancement and things like that, it's a lot on my plate. But investing in working with a coach or, finding a network of people who are like-minded, who might be experiencing similar things, will be a strong way to ensure your steady comeback.
Thank you, Lucy. And thank you for sharing and being vulnerable today with us.
Sure.
And thank you to our audience. We have other questions where people are sharing what they're going through. And I think in many ways, you have a community. There are many people, a lot of people are burned out. And I think it's that recognition and then also knowing the tools, some of them which you've shared, and then also drawing that line and then now putting into action. Really excited. Thank you for that, very tangible process. I have someone here that says, hi, I am 6 months into my new job and I'm already burnt out. Every day before I get to work, I have anxiety and dread going to work. In the environment I work with, I cannot plan because it is unpredictable and fast-paced, like in the emergency room. How do I go about talking to my manager about this without showing weakness?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And again, the acknowledgement that people, have a hard time with is because we don't want to look weak. We don't want to look like we can't handle things. But recognizing that burnout does not see any color, does not see any gender, does not see anyone, everyone experiences burnout. And thank you for sharing with us what you're going through. Most of us experience burnout, especially when we start a new job. We want to do so well, and we are always trying to impress our colleagues, our supervisors, which is a good thing. But at the same time, you want to take it slowly so that you don't get to a point where people see you as overwhelmed. One of the ways I would say you can bring this to your supervisor is figuring out what is causing it. Is it because there is no schedule or predictable way that you can do your job that's making you feel so uneasy? Or is it because of the time frame that you have to work? What are some of the things specifically that someone can do something about? Maybe it's not you able to do it. Maybe it's letting your supervisor know, hey, I recognize that I'm not a morning person. Is it possible that I start work an hour later so that I can have some time in the morning to be able to get into my game zone and be able to actually be at my highest productivity? And those are things that a good manager would negotiate with you, and make sure that, your manager is hearing that you want to do better. It's not because you are weak, but it's more because you feel like you have the ability to contribute more. And right now, you're not able to do it alone. So if your partner, he or she or they, could partner with you to figure out what it is specifically. Maybe your industry does not allow you to have a schedule. Well, what are some things that you can count on, that you can look forward to, that you love about your job, that you can put time onto your calendar and be looking forward to? Hopefully those things will help you think about, something positive instead of, what we're naturally able to do, which is focus on all the things that stress us out. And if you have any more questions about your specific situation, I'll share my contact information later, and you're welcome to get on a free consultation call with me, and we can talk through specifics about what you're going through.
We have another question is, how do you personally work through burnout when you're still in the middle of so many commitments?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So I recently experienced that as I was pregnant, and the president of this club, president of that club, vice president of another club, and still in the midst of it. Because I've set tools for myself to look forward and prioritize the things that are important to me, I was able to communicate with other people that I'm going to be taking the summer off. And it was very scary for me because I didn't know what that was going to be like. My entire life, I had always been someone involved in many things and done it all pretty well. But, bringing a child into this world is a different game. And for me, that experience, I knew that I needed to take a break from all of the commitments that I had, no matter how much I love them, right? Most of us do a lot of our extracurricular things because we're really passionate about the cause, or we feel connected with the community. But sometimes that same thing is what causes us the stress that make us feel burnout. So really finding a way to communicate with the people who are involved will help you feel less like a failure, less like someone who's disappointing people, because you're giving them a heads up and you're letting them know, I need a break. This doesn't mean that I don't care. This doesn't mean that I don't want to be involved anymore. And in fact, if we're able to make a break happen for me, I can come back better and stronger. And most people hear that and they're like, oh yeah, let's make sure you get some rest, get some sleep, get some water, those literal things. But the concept is taking a break, taking a step back. And people hearing you say that will actually feel like you are someone who is a champion of making sure that self-care is important and that you want the best for whatever organization or thing that you're working on.
Thank you. Another person is asking, what if you don't know what your triggers are for becoming burnt out? How can you identify the signs that you are burning out?
Absolutely. This is where you use your support system, a roommate, your best friend, a family member. Ask them, hey, when I'm stressed out, what do you notice? Trust me, they will tell you, because when you're stressed out, you're probably deflecting on them, right? And they'll tell you you're eating too fast and you don't even say a word at dinner, or you rush out and you always leave the car running when it should be turned off. They'll tell you these literal things. I didn't know that I was yelling at my dog until my partner was like, why are you yelling at him for barking? And I'm like, oh yeah, I guess my dog's supposed to be barking. It was someone else who told me. I'm not thinking about that type of stuff. So use your support system, use the people around you whom you trust, and just vice versa, someone whom you care about. Think about some of the things that you notice when they're stressed out And it might be the same for you. It could be totally different. But again, avoiding burnout takes a community. It's not something you just do on your own, and it's not your own responsibility. People who love and care about you will tell you that you need a break, and you got to trust them just the same way that you would do for someone you love and care about.
Thank you. Just as a follow-up to that, I think it sounds like someone's following up to what you just said. Have you found, what if you don't have a daily support system? Most of my friends are married and are busy with their own families and children and don't have time to check in. And I don't have a family or a partner. How do they get that daily support system?
I totally understand. I think joining a community of some sort would be really helpful. So getting involved with the Alumni Association, any of the regional networks, you don't necessarily have to have a friend that you talk to every day, right? Again, even though this is a community thing, it is your life and it is your responsibility. But you can build a community, and UCLA Alumni Association has many avenues for you to do that. That's just one avenue. I also mentioned I'm a Rotarian. You can join a service organization that would bring you with like-minded people and find and build that community. You are someone people care about, and you can be in a place where you don't have to be alone. Now, if you happen to, at the moment, feel like you're alone, you have your tools to fall back on. And that's why it's important to write things down, think about the future. What are some of the things that you want to work on? What are some of the things that you don't want to keep doing? For me, at some point I realized I didn't want to keep giving my time away because someone asked me to. So I decided that whenever someone asks me to do something, I have to ask myself, is it something that I'm actually passionate and interested about personally? Or am I just saying yes because I feel bad saying no? So those are some of the things that the more reflection you do for yourself, you can take accountability for yourself, and then your community adds on to it. And if you feel like you don't have a community right now, build one. There's plenty of avenues, and I'm happy to talk with you more about some of the interests that you have and find you an opportunity to connect with other people who are like-minded.
Thank you, Lucy. I have someone who says, I'm differently abled and cannot go for walks and get as much sunshine as I would like because of an injury to my leg. Any thoughts for folks that are differently abled?
Sure. I hope that you're able to work with someone to help you physically, but mentally, you are able to do whatever you feel like is most appropriate for you. I don't necessarily say like going for walks is literally what you need to do. But if you are able to even get outside to your patio or just open the door to get some air outside, that is something that is similar to going for a walk. If you are working with a physical therapist or working with someone or a community of people who are experiencing similar things as you would be able to find more resources or other avenues of taking a break or other avenues of self-care that is appropriate for what you're going through.
I have another question from Anne. Have you found in your coaching practice that it helps to reflect on past resilience during a current burnout to remind oneself of inner strength? Sometimes that works for me, but it doesn't always stick, and I don't know why.
That's a great question, Anne, and I appreciate you asking it. It's helpful to think about the opportunities in life in which you have succeeded and overcome. But I also think that every experience is unique, right? Even though, we all have experienced similar things in life that have brought us grief or frustration or sadness, we all go through that experience very uniquely. It's helpful to think about some of the ways that you have overcome because it reminds you that you can do it. But at the same time, it's not to be there to put pressure on yourself like, oh, why are you still sad when you've gone through this before? You want to try to avoid those types of thoughts where you make yourself feel like, come on, like this is easy peasy because you've gone through something else worse before. It shouldn't be about that. It should be much more about the fact that life can be a cycle of ups and downs. And the fact that you are experiencing a low right now doesn't mean you have to stay there. And here are the opportunities that have shown you that you have experienced other types of lows before and you have overcome and come back up high. So hopefully you're not using previous opportunities to put stress on yourself, but actually to motivate yourself to understand that you can do it. And if it doesn't serve you that way, that's okay. Focus on what is at hand and think about at the moment and what you want your future to look like.
I have a couple of other questions. I want to try to do a little, and please help me if I'm not doing you justice, because I want to make sure we don't just read it. But it seems like we have someone who, again, is like dealing with unemployment, has had loss in terms of dogs and family members, and then also because of all of the situations in life, it's hard. How do you avoid burnout when things are out of your control and problems are incessant, from not necessarily being able to pay rent or, again, just hold a job. And again, how do you move forward through burnout when you have no help?
Absolutely. And I want to say thank you to this person for sharing so transparently. It sounds like you are going through a really tough time. And I am sad to say that I can actually relate to a few of the things that you've shared personally. I would suggest, because you have a very unique situation, I'm happy to talk with you offline so we can be more specific about what resources to help you with and help you find a community to connect with. But in general, I would say, life has its way of throwing many things at us at once. And there is that saying that, life doesn't throw you things that you cannot handle. But at the same time, sometimes we're just like, Dad, like, we don't want to do this anymore. This is too much. And I really just need a break. And that's okay. That's when you start looking, taking an inventory of your own life to see what are some of the things that are in my control. As I mentioned earlier, my favorite quote from Coach John Wooden, don't let what you cannot control interfere with the things that you can, right? You have the ability to take care of your body, to hopefully drink enough water, get enough sleep, make sure you are eating healthy foods, not just eating, because I don't think going to McDonald's every day is considered eating, but putting in some healthy nutrition into your body to give yourself even the inkling of a chance to feel physically well enough to tackle so many of the things that are emotionally draining and mentally draining. And I think once you give yourself that opportunity and you do some reflection to get your own self-inventory and you find that community, whatever you end up facing in life may feel daunting, but may feel achievable as well.
And it's a good follow-up. We have another person, again, is talking about that community. Again, I understand sometimes even with like an alumni association, it feels like it has to be more professional, and that there are strong boundaries about being vulnerable. And then also, potentially a therapist can be expensive, and even, they're not necessarily in a place to share, personal things about, when people have like a partner or family member. So are there other ways that people can share or process? You mentioned the writing, I think that's something too. I think sometimes we think another person has to be there to catch all of the things that we are throwing, that we're going through. Can we dig into, you talked about the reflection. Is that a big part of, I know like sometimes like maybe you can't find someone to be that person there for you. So when you're doing the writing and the reflection, what would, how does that help? And then also like, what activities do you suggest to do to get that out and not like just keep it inside? I will say also for someone who, saying like, oh, I can't talk to someone because of a partner or family. I will say sometimes I have friends who have partners and friends and families that are saying, I do want to be there for my friends. I just don't know how to be there for them. So, or sometimes those who are single don't reach out and say, hey, like, I need your help. It sometimes feels like it's the other way around. I do think those who don't have families or, a partner have equally enough, to ask for help in friendships.
Absolutely.
So, but, in terms of like the reflection piece, or if there isn't someone to go to, are there other resources or places they can turn to?
Absolutely. One of my favorite things to do that does not require another person is my gratitude journal. As I shared earlier, life has its way of making us focus on all of the crappy things and all of the stressors and all of the things that we don't like. And so a couple years ago, instilled a gratitude journal. And, the pressure was on when I wanted to do it on a daily basis. And it is no longer a daily basis activity for me anymore. But whenever I do feel that stress, whenever I notice I'm yelling at my dog, whenever I notice that I've been running late to meetings, I grab that gratitude journal so quickly and I write a couple of things down that I'm grateful for. And it really, literally, physically, and mentally makes me realize that as much of the things that are stressing me out, making me upset, making me feel like I'm angry and I don't want to do things anymore, there are also things that I literally can be grateful for. It could be something as small as the fact that you have the resources to be on a webinar right now, literally, right? Like, fine, you might be on your phone and not a computer. Fine, you might be working at the same time of joining a webinar. But guess what? You are part of the Alumni Association and you have the resources literally to be here, whether you're watching it live or recorded. That's something to be grateful for. Try to get your brain to think about some of the things that are out of the box that you feel like we possibly could take for granted. And that's a good start to not necessarily needing another person to share what you're going through, but doing some self-reflection to really be able to understand that, yes, life can suck, but it's actually, in context, not so bad.
Thank you, Lucy. And I also want to thank our listeners, our watchers, our audience. Thank you for being vulnerable. I think that, again, the vulnerability piece, you're not alone. I think that is also something when you feel lonely and things can make you feel alone, like you do have other folks here in your Bruin community who are going through that as well. And I know as we are navigating this world around us, it can feel like it's a lonely place, but that's why we wanted to share resources like that Lucy has, and also with our Alumni Association as well, whether it's joining a group or even just connecting with other people, because you may learn too that they are going through things as well like this. I will say not all of our networks are professionally oriented, right? You have groups like our regional networks that are saying, hey, like we want people to join, we want to connect, and they're regionally based so that they can be somewhere close by to you and that you don't have to travel. But then there also are groups, that are in the community, whether they're spiritual groups, religious groups, activity groups, things like that. I think the more sometimes we feel alone, the more we have to push ourselves sometimes it feels uncomfortable to get out of that. And making ourselves vulnerable to meet new people. I know that can be a scary thing. I know I've felt that way sometimes of putting myself in new situations. So I want to encourage you that you have done big and brave things and courageous things. If you're here, you graduated from UCLA and you did it, you did that. And so like you are capable of doing big and courageous things. And so I want to encourage you to be brave and courageous when you are feeling scared and alone. I have Steve Yu here, who is thanking us for this journey in wisdom. Do you have any books you recommend? For example, he read Atomic Habits and thought it was life-changing.
Yeah, there are several books that I enjoy. I have to be honest, I don't read anymore. I listen to books just when I get a chance, when I'm driving or when the baby's sleeping. But there are several, a few off the top of my head. Obviously, the books that have to do with Coach Wooden's Pyramid of Success has really, really impacted me, learned how to build foundational pillars in my life to be able to go back to them and remember kind of what my true values are. There are a few that are in the sports world that I follow, whether it's Ann Myers Drysdale and her biography. Usually I like to, read about people's memoirs, because it helps me realize that, even if we see them as a celebrity or someone famous or someone who has it all made, they've gone through some life things as well. So I'm happy to share some of the specific memoirs and biographies that have really impacted me as well. And then recently I've been listening to Robert Greene's series of books, The Art of Whatever. Lately I'm listening to The Art of Human Nature, which is very, very interesting, because I thought that I like people and I have a good, handle of how to work with people and build a community. Well, he brought a lot of different perspectives based on his book, and I'm still finishing it, so I'm excited to keep listening. There's different genres, right? Like the memoirs and biographies are much easier listens. And then there's, Robert Greene, who basically is quite philosophical, and, you have to really think to hear and get the message of what he's talking about. So yeah, feel free to message me, Steve, if you want to know specifically what books I'm listening to.
Thank you, Lucy. Well, I wanted to turn it back over to you. You have some other little small announcements for our group. So I'll turn it over to you to close us out, and I'll come back and I'll close us.
You got it. So with that, I wanted to give you all an opportunity to work with me. I have the pleasure of being a one-on-one coach. When I get the opportunity to be a coach, I tell people that I'm here to serve as your accountability partner and offer different perspectives when you are experiencing a big decision that you have to make in life, that, you might only see things one way because you're you. And I have the opportunity to work with you as an accountability partner to help you see the different things that may not be obvious to you when you make that decision. I also have speaking engagements, just like this one. Favorite topics include avoiding burnout, identifying transferable skills. I have an article that's about 7 skills that every athlete can use to transfer from the field to the office. I also help people think about ways to find their passions. And there's other topics that I've spoken on too, and happy to tell you all more about it if you'd like to reach out. And lastly, I do a lot of group coaching work too, whether it's for the workplace or for sports teams. I think it's extremely important to spend time for team building and strengthening leadership. It's not something that just comes naturally. So hopefully, if you are in a situation where you feel like you could use someone to help with team building or strengthening leadership amongst your group, feel free to call on me. With that, I'd love to stay connected with you all. So if you would, and these links will be put in the chat, subscribe to my listserv. You will receive the slides from today and a chance to win your very own passion planner. So I will give you a few days to subscribe, and then I will contact the person who will be randomly selected. And then that Google link or Google folder of tools for avoiding burnout will be shared with you as well. I mentioned earlier that I offer a free consultation call for folks. So if you have a specific situation that you would like someone to talk through with, please feel free to sign up. You just go to my website under services and you'll be able to see my calendar there. And lastly, if you want to try a passion planner or journal for yourself, I mentioned today that there is a special release going on to celebrate Passion Planner's 9th birthday. And so you can go to that specific link and use my code. The code does change on a monthly basis, so feel free to email me or contact me if you need a new code for 10% off. And lastly, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you something I'm passionate about and letting me tell you all about being a mental performance coach. My email is there, Instagram page is there, and I'm really grateful to be a Bruin Business 100 nominee and awardee. Thank you again. Go Bruins.
Thank you so much, Lucy, for this great session. And again, I want to thank our audience. Thank you, everyone, for sharing such personal stories and things that you've done, throughout, managing burnout. And for those who are going through what you're going through, thank you for coming. Thank you for making the time for yourself and allowing us to be part of your journey. Join me in thanking Lucy for being here today with us. But before we conclude, I'd like to encourage you to complete the follow-up survey you'll receive once we end the webinar. And so please let us know how you feel, what you think of the event, and also topics that you may be interested in as we plan for next year. So thank you for joining us, and go Bruins.
Go Bruins.